Hello everyone, welcome to Everything Must Go Part 2. In this presentation, we will talk about a multi-year digital preservation project called Remove Media in Legacy Collections, RMLC in short. This is Hyeeyoung Kim, digital archivist at the Briscoe Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Also here with me is Maryse Lundering-Timpano, archivist with the United States Army Take-On. The two of us are here today to share challenges and lessons learned from the project handoff. I was the first project manager who launched RMLC in 2018, and Maryse took it over in 2020. But before we get into the messy part, allow me to share a brief history of RMLC. In 2010, Bentley Historical Library at the University of Michigan established a digital preservation workflow. However, all removed media before 2010 were simply inventoried by processing archivists, with each year passing, leaving these unprocessed floppies and CDs where they were was becoming risky because of media degradation. So, to process unprocessed remote media in process collections, I joined Bentley as a project archivist in 2018. I structured RMLC to have three phases: pilot, part 1, and part 2. The pilot focused on getting the number of unprocessed remote media and the last known locations of them. Along the survey, I also developed end-to-end project workflow and tools that assist transferring of removed media content. After the successful pilot, I led a team of 3, me and 2 remote media technicians through part 1's long journey. Every day for a year, we pulled the removed media from boxes, transferred their content, and updated the finding aids. Now, if you would like to learn more about pilot and part 1, I shared the details at the previous digital preservation conference in 2019. The link to that slide is in slide 3. In March 2020, I moved to the Briscoe Center at the University of Texas at Austin. This meant part 2 had to be led by someone else. Maryse, who was the remote media technician at the time, stepped in. Maryse?
By the time I stepped in, there were only 2 tasks left: processing the archival information packages and depositing them into a digital repository. The first challenge I faced was locating and reviewing the project documentation Hyeeyoung created. In addition to an overall project plan, I inherited workflow documentation for each task, as well as spreadsheets that detailed all of the items in progress and the out-of-scope collections. These documents made understanding of the next steps fairly easy because Hyeeyoung standardized his terminology and metadata and followed a consistent format for each type of document. Even with extensive documentation, I still had to decipher it. There had been subtle changes to the workflow and spreadsheets that were never noted. In some cases, I had to use clues from other spreadsheet entries to figure out what information I needed to record. Also, I didn't know the location of all of the documents related to RMLC. One reason was being told about documents and then learning I didn't have access to them. Additionally, when I didn't know a document existed, it was usually because it was related to RMLC, but Hyeeyoung didn't create it, so I didn't know to search for it. All of these situations were understandable because institutions usually have multiple projects in progress, and that results in a lot of documents to keep track of. My takeaway from this challenge is that budgeting time early in the project to create standardized documentation will pay off in the long run. The consistency will assist anyone picking up the project, whether it's a new manager or yourself after a period of time, in deciphering all of the information. Additionally, my advice is to create a README for the project that lists the locations of all the related materials. Once I read through the initial documentation, I was able to envision finishing the project. However, as we all know, 2020 had other plans in store, and this is where the second challenge began. Originally, the project was designed to utilize PCs and other hardware located at the Bentley. Unfortunately, I lost access to the existing project setup in March 2020 when the Bentley switched to remote work and I wasn't loaned a work laptop. As a result, I only had my MacBook and a very unstable Wi Fi connection. To finish the project, I quickly learned I needed to adapt what little technology I had. First, I had to figure out how to configure the university's VPN. Next, I had to find software that would allow me to access a remote PC server on my MacBook. Then I had to repeatedly request permissions so I could remotely access the project's materials and configure my work environment. Looking back, I don't think I could have completed the project remotely if the handoff took place during the transfer stage of Part 1. In addition to the extensive documentation, what helped me remain flexible and overcome obstacles was the support of my supervisors. They assisted me with transitioning to remote work, accessing the materials, and brainstorm solutions. I couldn't have completed this project remotely without Dallas and Max, and I want to thank them for their support. Finally, the third challenge was updating the old automation scripts the project utilized and creating new ones as the workflow changed. I found the old scripts usually needed a little tweaking to meet the project's current needs. An example was the script used to create dissemination information packages, or DIPs. The original script created one DIP file per title on a video DVD. However, the workflow changed when we concluded that having one finding aid record linked to multiple MP4 files was rather impractical. So I altered the make dip script to merge all of the MP4 files into a single coherent MP4 file. For anyone who wants to check out these scripts later, the links are in slide 15. My takeaway from this final challenge is that completing large-scale digital projects will greatly benefit from having a person on your team who can edit and write scripts at a basic level. Being able to find programmatic solutions and debug scripts enabled me to drastically reduce human errors, maintain established standards, reduce my overall workload, and without a doubt, it was my greatest asset for completing the project. As of September 2021, the project was on track to be completed by the end of October. A total of 1,585 individual removable media from 195 collections will have been processed and deposited. This is significantly less than Hyeeyoung's original estimate of roughly 4,500 removable media across 243 collections because there were a large number of duplicate records, or there were records where no removable media were actually found. Finally, records were excluded to prevent the project's scope from creeping. And now I'll hand it back to Hyeeyoung to talk more about the spinoff from RMLC.
While Maryse was finishing up RMLC in Michigan, I picked up another legacy project in Texas called Legacy Accession Record Digitization, LARD in short. I won't go into the details here, but the gist is that the pandemic happened, everyone at the Briscoe Center went working remotely, but not every internal records we had were accessible over the internet. For example, our accession records from 60s to early 90s were still in papers, and this put a lot of constraint on many remote projects. So I chartered LARD in 2020 with a group of 5 archivists, and we set out to scan and transcribe these records into archive space. We started LARD with 39 volumes, and as of September 2021, the team has just 9 more volumes to go. Hooray. So, what RMLC lessons have I applied to LARD? Well, first, the perspective I gained from being in a term-limited position made me a better project manager. How? Always be quitting. It's a phrase that I came across that sums up my point perfectly. No, I'm not saying you should leave your job constantly. What I mean is, when you start a project, see it from a perspective that you'll have to leave soon. Does the project have everything documented? Will the next manager be successful in picking up the project? And next, the tags are all about catching those decisions that falls through the cracks. For example, when the Learn team makes a decision, it and its reasons get recorded in the meeting note with #decision. This simple trick has been helping the team to refer the past decisions quickly. And lastly, decisions in Learn are being explored further using thinking tools. I really like 6 thinking hats, which is about looking at a decision from 6 different perspectives. And second order thinking is for considering the long-term consequences of a decision. If you'd like to learn more about these, I put a link in slide 19 that will take you to a website that showcases various thinking tools. And that's all from us. Thank you for attending the presentation, and if you have any questions, feel free to send us an email. Thank you.